Today we got ANDOR Season 2, Episode 10 and 12 finale. They cooked with it. No cap. You gotta watch Rogue One again.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full ANDOR Season 2, Episodes 10, 11, and 12 video. This is the finale, like the last of ANDOR Season 2. There are no more ANDOR episodes after this because literally it's meant to end just as the opening scene of Rogue One is happening with him learning about the Death Star. That was the whole reason why he was going to the Ring of Kafrene to meet with his contact. Because
And they didn't want to
the
let him go,
information
bruh. That was crazy.
form the plan to steal the plans to take down the Death Star. There are a lot of Easter eggs and references. Probably going to go down is some of the best Star Wars that they will ever release. Like, it will be hard for Star Wars to top this. I think they can do it eventually,
No cap.
but we will see how long
They gotta
it
do
takes
some
them
Darth
to do
Vader
that.
series.
The only other live-action Star Wars TV show that we know
Rated
they're
R.
releasing right now is Ahsoka Season 2 because they just started filming. Hayden Christensen has been talking a lot about coming back as Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader for that. There's a lot of stuff going on.
He needs his own
A lot
show.
of characters are coming back. Thank you, Star Wars people, for taking all of our notes about doing more live-action Clone Wars
For real,
flashbacks.
bro.
But the other big change that's
Listen
happening
to the
behind the scenes of
fans.
Star Wars right now is that they're generally trying to refocus their efforts on putting Star Wars back in movie theaters. So they're still going to be doing
Mandalorian,
live-action
I think,
TV
is gonna
shows
be the
after
first one.
Andor, but it is be more focused on the movies, not on the TV shows as much. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. There is a lot to unpack here. So the title of episode 10 was Make It Stop, one of the best episodes of Star Wars ever. Like, we can say that about a lot of these last couple of episodes.
Hey, that was a crazy
It's a
one.
reference to Luthen's cries in his flashbacks to show how he came to start the rebellion, like his whole mission, and how he met Clea for the first time. He wanted the war
And he
violence
really
to
started
stop.
it, bruh.
They imply that he's an Imperial deserter. He was part of the Imperial army and just happened to find Clea, and it all just happened at the same time. And then he went AWOL, and that was the beginning of it all. Just based on the timeline of when it seems like this is meant to take place, it's after the events of Revenge of the Sith. So they're still clone troopers, but it's not the Clone Wars that they're in the middle of these flashbacks. He's a sergeant, and the Empire has just been going around pacifying a lot of the local planets. So his first real act
He
of
didn't like it,
rebellion
bruh.
is to save Clea, like help hide her, then they both go AWOL together. Just like the previous blocks of episodes, this final arc begins 1 year after the Gorman Massacre block of
Bruh.
episodes. Also, one of the
The
best
hell?
block of episodes that Star Wars has ever released, ever.
For
They used
real,
the
bro.
one BBY title for it to be 1 year before the Battle of Yavin. Star Wars Rebels fans out there also remember this is the same very traumatic year that Kanan Jarrus was sacrificing himself. So big
That was a
reminder
goated
is that
episode.
the last couple episodes of Andor are overlapping with the events of Star Wars Rebels. But this entire final block of episodes is meant to end, like I said, right as the opening moments of Rogue One are beginning with Andor and Jyn Erso. And largely they use this episode to show you what happens to Luthen, how he winds up dying, sacrificing himself, and to show Clea's backstory. Sort of as a bookend to their
Bruh,
relationship.
I thought she was
like how
gonna
they
save
met
him at
initially,
first, but
and
then
then
she
how they ended things with her
let him die,
putting his life
basically.
support so that he could die, so that the Empire would not learn about the rebellion. They also pay off the canon story detail that Luthen is never mentioned at any point during the original trilogy movies, A New Hope, during Rogue One, when the rebellion actually begins its full-on civil war against the Empire, like full-on space battles. He wasn't around because he died sacrificing himself. Like, that was his whole arc, is that he was willing to sacrifice anything and everything.
He
He'd
knew
given
what had to be
everything to the
done.
rebellion, except for his life. Like, that was the last thing to give. I think that pretty much everybody who watched that first block of episodes in season 1 was like, you know what, he's probably not around because he winds up dying. Very easy prediction to make when the series started.
Sacrifice.
One of the cool details, though, of this block of episodes just in general, because they want to show you what happened to a lot of the major characters during the series that you don't see later in the timeline, and most of them wind up getting taken out in darkly ironic
Yeah, they got
ways.
whooped
The Imperial
after they
characters specifically.
let the
We will get
Clea
into
go.
each of those as we go through those parts of the episodes. Then we find out what winds up happening to Lonnie, sort of setting up the end of the episode, like basically the end of
He got
Luthen.
fried.
It's been a year, and they explained that in that year, Dedra has eventually tracked Luthen down. Like, she's traced Project Axis back to him, but she's been going rogue against the orders of Partagaz and the other Imperials in the ISB. So basically, Dedra is breaking the law to find Luthen, even though she thinks she's doing the right thing. Like, that's her whole mission, finding out where the
She
rebellion
thought she
is
was gonna
happening
get
so that they
rewarded,
can
bruh.
take them down. But in order to
They
do
should
that,
have just
the
listened to
irony
her
is
though.
she has to break the law, which winds up getting her thrown in prison
If they
and
would
kind
have,
of botching the job.
the rebellion
So
would have
all
got
these different
stopped.
things about the
Low
rebellion,
key.
like them taking down the Death Star, them eventually defeating the Empire, they want to show how it was a 1 in a million chance, like everything went wrong in exactly the right way so that they
Yep.
could take down the Empire. And at any point, if anything had gone differently at all, like anybody hadn't been stupid along the way or done like some small mistake, the rebels would not have been successful. The Empire would still be ruling the galaxy. They make it sound like in the past year, Luthen has burned the rest of his bridges, and the rest of the rebel leaders on Yavin don't really like him that much, and he doesn't
Ain't
want
nobody
anything to
was
do with
fucking
them,
with him,
even though
bro.
they're all kind
And
of
he
on the same
started it.
team. Like some really, really bad stuff has gone down in the past year. So the idea is that Luthen is going into this meeting with Lonnie to learn about the Death Star without knowing what he's going to be learning about, but expecting to die. Like they think that this is a trap, and he is prepared to die. So like he's not worried about this. And he tells her, no, it's going to be me. I'm going to be the one to sacrifice myself, not you. When he says Lonnie rang the big bell, they just make it sound like it's some very, very big public alert, like very in danger of being found out, but it was such a big emergency that he used this big, big alert. In the way that Lonnie explains it, he's
And
been
nobody
using
found
Dedra's
out,
chain
bro.
code to
That's
monitor
crazy.
all
Until
of their
then.
communications, which we find out later. The whole reason why the rebels learned about the Death Star in the first place is because Dedra is really, really bad at email. I love that detail. It was so darkly hilarious. I should have told somebody about those emails I wasn't supposed to get. I should have deleted those a long time ago, but I didn't. Let it be known that the most powerful people can be taken down by bad emails. They confirmed the Emperor's energy program was a lie, like she was told at the beginning of Season 2. He uncovered the secrets behind Gorman, the mineral for the reactor lenses on the Death Star. He mentions the Kyber crystals on Jedha. Those were used to power the Death Star's super laser. That's why it's so powerful. It's the same type of crystals Jedi and Sith use in their lightsabers. The labor camps he mentions is a reference to the Narkina 5 arc in Season 1, with them basically building parts for the Death Star. The Empire used slave labor to build the Death Star just in general. Like, that's the only way they were able to build it and keep it secret, is if they used slaves and then killed the slaves. They mention Scarif, that's Krennic's base, where the secret weapons facility stores a lot of its secret project plans, like Project Blacksaber. The Death Star was just one of many secret projects that he was working on. When he says Krennic has
they
been
need
working
to
on this
show
for over a
the
decade,
other ones.
that's just to connect with the events of Revenge of the Sith, where we saw them building the outer framework. Like they already started building the Death Star when Revenge of the Sith is happening. Then they imply that Luthen gets the knowledge of the Death Star out of Lonnie and kills him, but paying it off like he was promising that he would get his family safely to Yavin 4. We don't really find out what happened to
you
Lonnie's
can't really
family,
trust him
only
in a
that
way,
Lonnie
though.
himself is killed by Luthen. This is a little bit like
Because
the
he could
vibes
have
that
betrayed the
Andor was giving
rebellion.
off in the last block of episodes, where like he's really trigger happy, killing anybody that looked at him funny or gave him bad vibes. But at least on Andor's side of things, it seems like in this block of episodes, he's mellowed out way more than he was in the last block of episodes. Like, Luthen has gotten more paranoid, Andor has gotten less paranoid. Luthen gives all the important information to Kleya. They specifically mention Galen Erso, Jin's father, the person who designed the Death Star, played by Mads Mikkelsen, in the super laser weapon. Luthen has her take this to the next step, which she eventually winds up informing Andor, who comes to rescue her and take her to Yavin, basically slowly setting up the events of Rogue One. Just as he destroys the rebel radio that they've been
were
using
so
all this
close
time,
of
Dedra
not
shows up
making it
to
happen.
arrest him with her team, which they explain she went rogue herself to do, like she's breaking the law to try to arrest him on her own. There are a couple cool Easter eggs during this moment too, like anytime you go to Luthen's shop, you're kind of on the lookout for new Easter eggs, but with a few exceptions, most of the stuff in here has been here all season, or since Season 1 in some cases. They pass by the Jedi Temple Guardian mask that's been here since Season 1. There are only 2 fake pieces in the gallery, but they don't reveal what the fakes are. She steps into frame with Padme's crown from the Phantom Menace. That's been here since the beginning of Season 2.
That was pretty cool.
He mentions the Lautolan Bleeder. That's a knife from Kit Fisto's race, big prequel character. There have been a lot of prequel references in his artifacts. He says it's 60 centuries old, that's 6,000 years. Putting it in the Old Republic era, there have been a ton of Knights of the Old Republic references on all of the live action and some of the animated shows too the last couple of years.
We need to get something of it, bro.
Dave Filoni to do a live action series or movies set during the Knights of the Old Republic era at some point. She uses this ruse of having a new artifact for him to reveal the Star Path unit that Andor stole for him at the beginning of
She
season 1.
was
It's the whole
obsessed with
reason why
that, bruh.
Andor wound up meeting Luthen in the first place, because he was going to sell the Star Path unit and Luthen was the guy to show up to buy it. Dedra had been using that to try and track him down since the events of that, calling him the axis of all rebel activity in the galaxy. That's why it was called Project Axis. Her whole speech about chaos and order is just to reveal what a fascist she is and to set up the big payoff, like the darkly ironic twist of her being taken out by the empire that she loves so much.
Shaking my
Not
head, doing
killed,
too
but
much for
crushed
them.
by the thing that
That's
she
how people
loves.
be at work,
Very
bruh.
appropriate for someone like her to
They
go
be
out.
quick to fire you.
Basically winding up just like Andor did during the Narkina 5 arc. If you remember, he also got thrown in prison wrongly, so the idea is that Dedra is also being wrongly thrown in prison. Maybe, when the rebels eventually defeat the Empire and Return of the Jedi, she'll be let out of prison if she isn't killed in prison. When he tells her the
I doubt
rebellion
it.
is everywhere now, it's flown away, that's just a reference to Mon Mothma's speech rallying the rest of the galaxy around the rebels using the Gorman massacre a year ago in that last block of episodes. That helped drive the kind of support for the rebels that allowed them to turn into the legitimate fighting force capable of fighting full-on space battles with the Empire, whereas before, they were just like a ragtag group of people trying to do things to help the galaxy. But eventually, when we do go to Yavin 4, you actually
That's
see
how
how
it
much
starts,
it's
bro.
evolved since the
By a
last
little
block
bit
of
of people.
episodes. That's because of Mon Mothma's speech. She notices the destroyed radio, and then they also flash the Star Killer armor suit again. That's been there since season 1. They always move it around too, just because it looks so cool. And he winds up using it as an opportunity to kill himself with the Lautolan bleeder. Even though they try to save him, this basically sets up the end of the episode when Clea tracks him down and is able to finish the job. Like
Bro,
basically
that was
remove his life
nervous
support
scene,
so that the
bro.
Empire is not
He's
able
like,
to
bro,
question
hurry
him
up
and
before
find
they
out
catch
anything
you.
about the rebellion. A lot of this, I think, is in service of also explaining how the Empire didn't learn about Yavin 4 until A New Hope, with Princess Leia and Grand Moff Tarkin here.
You're sure the homing beacon is secure aboard their ship?
Like, there's a lot of really critical information that the Rebels and the Empire have to learn during the original trilogy in a certain order, and they don't want to mess with that during these episodes. So you can kind of feel at different moments that certain plot is happening because of that, like a certain plot armor because of the original trilogy. Like, we can't change that canon. There's a bit of a darkly funny moment back at the ISB where nobody cares that Lonnie has just been found dead.
Yeah.
R.I.P. to him.
He
They're
said, fuck
mostly
him.
upset about what happened with Dedra and Luthen. Partagaz is pissed at Dedra, and I think the reason why he is surprised when he learns about what happened to Lonnie is that he instantly does the mental math connecting Lonnie's death to Luthen and the rebels. Like, oh, that's how they found out all this stuff. And you can kind of see the wheels turning in his head, like, this is going to end badly for all of us. Like, we will all be arrested because of how this is going sideways.
And they were.
There are a couple more Easter eggs when we see the
Or
ISB
killed,
coming
bruh.
over Luthen's shop. They scan near the mural of the Mortis gods. We'll get more into live-action Mortis gods during Ahsoka Season 2. Like, that's going to be a lot of Dave Filoni, deep George Lucas canon that they'll be bringing back. We started to get some more Easter eggs from them in live action during Ahsoka Season 1. Then we go to Clea at the safe house, which looks like there's been some big battle here. Like, there's a bunch of damage, like things have been torn up. It also seems like this whole building has just gone into disrepair in the past year. Like,
That
something
was a
real bad has
nervous scene
happened here.
too, bro.
Using this
Cause
to
they
launch
would
into
not
her
hurry up.
flashbacks for the rest of the episode, sort of intercutting that.
They
with her
weren't
making
trying to
her way
go
Luthen
save her,
present
bruh.
day so that she can remove his life support. I already explained the context for when this was taking place. Like, this is after the events of Revenge of the Sith, when the clone troopers were still around. Like, they hadn't completely died out yet, but you started to see regular stormtroopers mixed in with the clone troopers, and they were wearing the newer clone trooper armor. They started to get into this at the very end of the Clone Wars episodes, with that moment where you see the clone troopers, but in the newer stormtrooper-looking clone trooper armor. He winds up spotting Clea, decides to save her, and he's so broken down, like he's so twisted up by what they've been doing, he's sick of it, he wants to go AWOL, and just uses this as an opportunity. Like, his first act of rebellion is to save Clea, essentially. All their flashbacks are broken up into a couple different points, jumping across
I like
their
how they
timeline.
did
So we
it.
go like a little
That
bit
episode was
forward, and we
perfect,
actually
bro.
see them trying to sell an artifact to earn some more money. And this is just set up the idea of how he became an antiquities dealer in present day. Mostly also to show you what their relationship was like he was kind of her surrogate father, but also setting the stage that he was a very cold father, even though he did technically care about her. Like, he actually did feel like a father, but it seems like he was just so stuck on this idea of rebellion in his long-term plan that a lot of times it didn't feel like he was very warm to her. They also use this for a couple of funny moments where they show you how she's actually really quick, really shrewd as a child too. Like she
Yeah, she can
bargains for a much, much
negotiate.
higher price. Next, we see them trying to sell a Deveronian victory necklace. There have been several of these in the movies and TV shows. Clancy Brown played one during The Mandalorian Season 1. George Lucas created the race for the original trilogy, so they've been around for a very, very long time. Then the way they explain this execution that goes down, it's actually Luthen who has to explain his long-term plan to Clea, who wants to actually attack the Imperials right here, right now. Like, let's start
I
fighting
thought she
right now. And he
was.
basically has to explain to her, like, no,
And
fight
screw it all
smarter,
up.
not harder. This is going to take a very, very long time, so pick your battles more wisely. That is not totally clear, but this next attack that they actually pull off here with the bomb seems almost like it's taking place on Naboo. But he
Yeah,
basically explains to her
Naboo.
why they're doing this and how to do it the right way. Like, no, you have to actually watch this and be committed. Are you sure you want to be in on this? And she basically tells him, no, I want to be here. Also, to parallel a very similar moment of her setting off the bomb, blowing a bunch of Imperial vehicles up so that she can make it to Luthen and kill him.
She learned from the
She
best.
does get a chance to say her goodbyes to him for like a real brief hot second when she does remove his life support, and notice that he is smiling when this happens. One of the very, very few times we've actually seen him smile and it wasn't a lie. He's done it a couple times, usually when they pull off some big victory like Aldani. That's like one of the few times you can actually remember Luthen being super, super happy. Then episode 11 was titled Who Else Knows, is a reference to Krennic when he's interrogating
Who
Dedra.
else
They basically
knows?
call her ass in, asking her who else knows about the Death Star because of her big email problem. Like, you should have told us about all these emails.
Now
Now the
everybody
rebels know
knows.
everything that we're doing, and it's setting off this whole domino plan that will allow them
And
to
they
defeat
got
the
cooked
Empire.
because of it.
All because you didn't delete some old emails that you weren't supposed to get in the first place. The opening scene
Shake my
starts
head.
immediately after the last episode with the ISB investigating Luthen's body. They pin more blame on what happened to Dedra, basically throwing her under the bus. Like, anything bad that happened
He
here,
didn't
because
like
of
her
this,
for
just
anything,
blame it
bro.
on Dedra. We'll put her in prison and we'll never have to think about it again. But to their credit, all these people also die in darkly ironic ways too. So everybody in general is terrible here, and they all get their comeuppance eventually. But the whole twist here should be very clear, they're very obvious about this, is that the Empire, which she so steadfastly believed in for so long, turns on her. She's betrayed in a very serious way by the very thing that she loves so much. That's what you get for being a fascist. They
Right.
show her in the same questioning room that she used to interrogate Cyril Karn in during season 1, how the tables have turned. Like, they really wanted this to feel like her interrogation of him in season 1, only now it's Krennic interrogating her, and she looks like she's having a
She
full-on
was
panic
about to
attack
cry,
during
bro.
this. There's a lot of wordplay
She knew
with a
she
lot
was
of Krennic's
cooked.
speeches too. Like, he uses the term palpable, which feels like wordplay references to Palpatine. And there's a lot of references to the Emperor during this. The way the showrunner talked about Emperor Palpatine is they wanted to feel like a figure that just loomed very large over the plot, and it was more effective that he was not on the show. Like, somehow Palpatine did not return. Personally, I think he's right. I think the way they reference him makes him feel more powerful and more terrifying
Yeah.
than if you'd actually seen Palpatine running around pointing at people, force lightning
I
people.
mean, he don't really need
She
to be
starts
there
naming off
for
other
normal
people who
people,
might know
bro.
about the Death Star project. Legret's brother on Scarif, she mentions, is more Rogue One connections. She makes it sound like his brother mentioned the Death Star to Legret. He's also the person who tries to arrest Partagaz at the end of the episodes, who then winds up killing himself. Would not be surprised if Legret himself also winds up thrown in prison because of this. Like, they kind of make it sound like most of the ISB characters all either die in ironic ways or get thrown in prison themselves. All because they failed to stop the rebels learning about the Death Star.
Yeah, you gotta
They
clean up,
mentioned
bro.
Galen Urso again,
Cause
whole
they
bunch of
fucked
stuff
up
from Rogue One. The
bad.
Jedha reports, the Adu journals, that's the base that Krennic has Galen Urso working at that we see during Rogue One. Basically, her explaining how she learned about all the different important aspects of the Death Star's construction so that it sets up the plot points of Rogue One. She also mentions the valet for the local Moff on Jedha was a rebel spy that Luthen recruited, but the Empire found out about him and killed him before Dedra could trace it back to Luthen, basically explaining that the Empire was making her job harder. Like, the Empire was actually working against its own best interests and could have snuffed it out much earlier before it had a chance
But
to
they
actually
didn't
stop
want
the
to
Empire.
listen.
That's kind of the downfall of most major empires, not just fictional ones, but also ones in real life, across real life history, is that they become so big that eventually they're taken down from within by a number of different causes. During the present day of The Mandalorian and Ahsoka series right now, the same thing is kind of happening to the New Republic. Like they're getting to the same point where they're starting to be
Bro,
crushed
they're
under their
dumb
own
because they
weight,
had so
setting the
many
stage
people
for
from the
how the
Empire
remnant of the Empire can
inside.
actually attack them and potentially take over the galaxy again.
If you're not a rebel spy,
They probably
you
will,
missed your
bro.
calling.
Another ironic statement, Krennic tells Dedra she missed her calling as a rebel
No
spy.
cap,
Probably
bro.
would've
She
made
would have
great
been a
rebel
good
spy.
one.
I was hoping for them to pay off some more connections to the actual rebellion, but they didn't really get into that. I think because they wanted to end the episodes as quickly as possible. If we'd gotten like a full 5 seasons like they wanted to do when they initially greenlit the show, then maybe they would have tried to tie her
Yeah, it
more
would have been
closely to
better,
rebel
bro.
characters.
Low-key.
Clea winds up using a hidden communication device they had buried in the wall of the safe house, uses it to contact Andor eventually, although it's actually Willman that gets the communique, and then he relays that to Andor and sort of sets the stage for how they wind up trying to rescue Clea and learning about the Death Star in the first place. They use this as an opportunity to show you
And
what's
imagine
happened to
if they
Yavin
didn't
4
go,
in the past
bruh.
year. Way more troops, way more ships.
They
Like, it
didn't
just started
go,
to
they would have
slowly
never
turn
stopped the
into
Empire.
the rebellion that you remember from the original trilogy. We find Andor at his hut playing a game of Rianza with K2SO and Melshi. Just having a lot of fun, none the worse for wear. Seems like Andor in general spirits have picked up in the past year. The other big reveal here too is that Melshi did survive and also seems like he is doing very well for himself in the rebellion. They talked about him surviving after the last Narkina 5 episodes in season 1. So like we'd known that he'd survived for a while now, but like we're finally seeing him. We go back to the ISB.
He found his
Krennic
place
lording
at
over
home,
everyone. I
bruh.
love all the Krennic scenes during this episode where he basically tells them, you find Clea or you're all getting thrown in prison too in the death march that's getting longer and longer, which Partagaz calls out as being an ironic statement because it's called the Death Star, and that's why he's worried so much. They argue about keeping the Death Star secret, and it's a miracle that it's been going on for this long because it's such a big project. Like, there's no way that people wouldn't have found
He
out
was
about
just trying to
this by
save
now.
his ass,
Krennic
bro.
also mentions Grand Moff Tarkin has been yelling at him for not finishing it sooner as well too, which we see during Rogue One too. Like, the
Yeah.
whole idea is that Grand Moff Tarkin basically throws Krennic under the bus too. When he says it's days away from being finished, that's basically more Rogue One. Like, we literally see them finishing the construction of the super laser during the
Gotta
beginning
go
of Rogue
watch
One.
this
This
again,
is just a few more
brother.
tests. This is one of the other darkly ironic ways that Imperial characters wind up getting killed off. Comeuppance being had by everyone. His first test of the super laser was on Jedha, destroying it, and then the second test was when Grand Moff Tarkin fired it at Scarif, killing Krennic himself. Killed by the thing that he devoted his entire life to building.
That's crazy.
Just like Dedra, taken out by the Empire that she spent her whole life serving. Partagaz jokes to him to save his speeches for Emperor Palpatine. That is correct. You definitely want to keep the Emperor happy. You will not end well if you do not. When Andor, Melshi, and K2SO take off for Coruscant and K2SO starts rattling off about the odds, they just felt like a little reference to a similar type of line during Rogue One where he talks about the odds.
He keeps them
makes his
stats
own
in line,
Emperor
boy.
Palpatine references saying, I've been on Coruscant before. I was part of a really big parade. The Emperor was there. He didn't say what they were celebrating or what the particular occasion was. It was probably just some random big parade that was happening after the events of Revenge of the Sith. Clea then relays the important information for Rogue One to Andor, Galen Erso, Yadu Research Center, Jedha, everything, while K2SO slowly makes his way in to take out the Imperial squad.
Bro, he saved them so bad, bro.
Even though it was a really big firefight, there
If it
were a
wasn't
couple
for
funny
him,
moments
they
during
would have
this
been
too. A
cooked.
couple funny takedowns. K2SO so OP here that he just
For real,
swats
bro.
everybody all over the place.
My thing is, like, how you gonna make him and y'all don't got weapons to stop him?
Very ironic way
Like,
to
bro,
go
what?
out, like I said. Then the episode 12 finale was titled Jedha, Kyber, Urso, which is a reference to the mantra they kept repeating through each of the last 3 episodes, the critical bits of information that form the plan for the events of Rogue One, where they go to steal the plans for the Death Star. Finding Galen Urso using Jin Urso,
Bro, they were so
the Kyber
annoying.
crystals on Jedha. In
They
Jedha
didn't
is also
wanna
where they learned
let them
Galen
go.
Urso's secret that he'd built the exhaust
Well, they didn't wanna
port weakness
believe
into the Death
anything.
Star, giving Luke Skywalker the ability to destroy it all with a single, well-placed, force-assisted shot. This massive super weapon that he built a weakness into to explain why it was so easy for the rebels to just boom, blow it up with a single shot.
Ooh.
They're able to escape the safe house because, ironically, Partagaz didn't have enough backup nearby because they'd all been busy running down the disease warrant that he put them on at Krennic's insistence.
They should
because
have
they needed
sent
an
everyone
excuse to
there,
go after
bruh.
Clea.
They're so
This
dumb.
again is an example of how the rebels are able to win because of mistakes that the Empire was making.
If y'all
This
knew where she
failure,
was
them
at,
escaping, also means that
why didn't you
Partagaz
send
gets
everyone, bruh?
arrested, gets thrown in prison, or
that's
he's going to be
crazy.
thrown in prison, but he kills himself before that can happen. Another darkly ironic way to go out. You can actually let me know, of all the ironic twists and ways the Imperial characters went out, which was your favorite? I think the Hirt takedown was actually the funniest one because of the K2SO human shield twist, but also probably
That
the
was
best
crazy.
one, the most poetic justice, is the way that Dedra goes
Yeah,
down.
she was annoying
Winding up
too.
a prisoner, just like the Narkina 5 arc. Would not be surprised if that prison was also on Narkina 5. Forced to work on parts for the second Death Star, like they're already starting to work on that second Death Star. Andor takes them back to Yavin 4 with news about the Death Star, and they begin to slowly form the plan to steal the plans, which is Rogue One, but it takes a little while to get there. Like, it's not just so simple as them showing
They
up
were
and telling them
skeptical,
what's going
bruh.
on and then taking off again.
But they didn't
Mon
have
Mothma
anything
and Bail
else, so
Organa return to
shit.
the show, now looking like they did during the events of Rogue One. Maybe not Bail Organa exactly because of the recasting, but you get the idea. They talk to Saw Gerrera, who's just completely batshit crazy, on Jedha, basically setting up the events of his character during Rogue One. They're mostly worried that his very extreme tactics will actually put the rebellion at risk of being found out by the Empire. Notice he also looks like he did during Rogue One with the
He was
breathing
just trying to
apparatus.
do
Now,
stuff.
we also learned in the last block of episodes that he actually uses that to just huff more gas fumes, basically. Like, that's what he's doing, just
That's
huffing
how he
gas
get
fumes.
high, bruh.
Probably one of the reasons why he's so crazy. They mention Admiral Raddus, who we actually see right after this. He's the other Mon Calamari helping the rebels along with Admiral Akbar. Raddus was the one that we saw during Rogue One. Merrick that he mentions is Anton Merrick, who's one of the other commanders from Rogue One. They also use these scenes to show you how paranoid the rebel leaders have got. Like, it's this very tricky place because they're about to actually declare open war against the Empire and the galaxy, like actual open
That's
space
crazy.
battles. So everybody's kind of walking around on eggshells these last couple of days before it all ramps
Yeah,
up.
that's
And
why they were all
basically where
scared,
we
bruh.
see things happen in Rogue One. Takes a couple different conversations.
So
over
Rogue
a
One
day
was
or
the
two
start of
them talking to
everything.
the rebel leaders and then talking amongst
The battle.
themselves, and then going on a roundabout way with Mon Mothma
Well,
and
not
Bail
really,
Organa,
but
basically giving him the all clear to proceed to
the
the Ring of
big start,
Capri,
I
where he
guess.
learns from his contact about the actual Death Star, like the final critical bit of information about exactly what it is. Because at least right now, if you didn't notice, most of the rebel leaders don't actually call it a Death Star. They just know that it's a super weapon. They don't know what kind of a super weapon yet. He learns that at the beginning of Rogue One. There are also a couple important bits of backstory that they cover here too. In the past year, something has happened to really put Luthen at odds with the rebel leaders, even though they do mourn his passing when they learn that he's dead.
Probably
It
the
just
same
sounds
thing
like
with
there
Saw
was a lot of
Gerrera.
love lost between them.
He thought it
Then they use a lot of
was
this
a
last
risk.
part of the
Well, they
finale
thought
to
it
sort
was
of
a
wrap
risk.
up a lot of the character arcs for the important Andor characters that you don't see during the events of Rogue One, like Belsartha, for example, and Clea. When Andor tells Wellman that Luthen made it worth it, that's paying off a line that they used in the last block of episodes. All the sacrifice, make sure you make it worth this sacrifice, which he did.
The Donnies.
When he shares the drink with Belsartha for Luthen, she also mentions Gorn, Nemik, Tamarin, Cinta, basically all the members of their crew from the Aldani job during Season 1, who have since all died. She mentions his mother again. It's the finale, so of course they're going to mention her at least one more time. And they reiterate the idea that there would be no rebellion without Luthen, like he's
No cat.
responsible for everything starting. Although one of the other really cool details is right after this, when he tells her about the Death Star, is they play Nemik's speech, his manifesto from Season 1. It's a great speech. Like, you replay this a couple of times because it's an amazing scene. And they reveal another big ironic takedown twist is that it's Partagaz listening to the speech, implying that he's listened to it a couple times, like multiple times. And it seems
He
like
knew
it's
he
actually
was cooked.
moving him pretty significantly. But they're here to arrest him for his failure in taking down Clea, and rather than let that happen, he kills himself. Like, he doesn't want to die in prison because he's an old man. When they go back to Velsartha,
They
she
ain't wanna
implies
get
that Andor
that
hasn't seen Bix in a long time. Remember,
treatment,
they weren't
bruh.
going to see each other till after it was all done. So Andor does not know that he has a child, which they reveal at the
Damn,
end of the
bro.
episode. Like, he wasn't on the same page.
That
Like, he
was
wasn't
sad,
secretly
bro.
withholding that information or
He don't
anything
even
like
know
that.
about it.
But that is probably one of the best payoffs in like happy
Yeah.
endings for the show, because it's a bit of a tragic ending in Rogue One because he winds up dying on Scarif. But they basically reveal that Bix went to live her best life on Mina Rao with his child, which she was pregnant with at the time when she left, which she's since given birth to, and living with B2 Emo, who even made himself a droid friend. So like everybody is living their best life on Mina Rao. Velsartha catches up with Clea. They reminisce about Luthen, their path forward. She repeats their line, "I have friends everywhere," and they just imply that Clea is just going to become a normal part of the Rebels, helping them through the original trilogy. Draven then gives Andor the mission to go to Kafrene, tells him about Jedha, tells him about Galen Erso, basically all the important things that he's doing at the beginning of Rogue One throughout that movie. They finally reference
He a real
Andor's
one for
sister
that.
again. There have been so many questions about how they were going to pay this off, and they kind of did not pay it off, so I can understand people being kind of mad that they didn't pay off what ultimately happened to his sister.
I didn't even know he had a
Maybe she's
sister.
alive out there somewhere. There are a lot of theories that Dedra might secretly turn out to be his sister. Like I said, I think if the show had actually gone for 5
That would have been
seasons,
crazy.
they probably would have explained what happened to her at some point. But because we had to go through like the speed run version, like the 2-season version of this, they just didn't have time to go back to that. You can let me know in the comments what you think happened to his sister. Bail Organa winds up giving him the formal mission, like the formal all clear to actually start investigating the Death Star, and gives him a "May the Force be with you." They've said that line a couple times during the show. It's one of those very iconic lines that they're always worried about overusing, like, "I've got a bad feeling about this," like things that you always see pop up in all the shows, in all the movies in different forms. At a certain point, it just becomes too much, so they don't want to do that too often in the different
Understandable, but
productions.
that was an important
As
moment,
he leaves
though.
the
So
planet, there's a quick montage to show all the characters just going about their daily lives in the rebellion. Like, this is what would be happening on a normal day. Love the detail here, too, with Mon Mothma just chilling out at the commissary tent like she's one of the bros. Another important payoff here, too, we see her husband with Davos Skolden's wife, drunk and passed out,
out of the
implying that they've been out
huss.
partying all night on Coruscant. They also imply they've been having an affair. So, a lot of questions here. Like, I mean, it's really clear that he's having an affair with her, but not clear what happened to Davos Skolden, though, if he's still alive, because I don't think he'd be totally
Probably
cool
not.
with the two of them having an affair. So, maybe at some point, Davos Skolden also died.
It goes into the Star Wars canon, like it's gonna be there forever.
Tony Gilroy, the showrunner, actually explained that there was a deleted scene during the last block of episodes that after Mon Mothma's speech, where she basically has it out against Palpatine and bails on the Senate, bails on the Empire in general, she was going to sneak back to her house where she was going to have a conversation with her husband about the consequences of her actions. So it was basically a scene to pay off what was going to happen to her husband and her daughter
would've
after
snitched
the
too,
events of her
though.
speech. You're kind of left to wonder what eventually happens to her daughter. Like, does she
Yeah.
wind up dying at some point, or is she alive out there somewhere during the events of the original trilogy? My assumption is that she was going to die some sort of tragic death, but I think them leaving it open-ended just leaves the possibility that she's alive out there somewhere.
She could join
But
the
probably one of the
rebellion
best
or the
payoffs here
Empire,
is
bruh.
Dedra in the prison uniform in a similar type of prison, meant to be a parallel for the Narkina 5 arc with Andor, because both of their
That's
characters
crazy.
were wrongly arrested, implying that she'll either die in prison working on another second
Most
Death Star,
likely.
or potentially be let out by the rebels once they defeat the Empire in Return of the Jedi, if she survives that long. You can let me know in the comments, how does Dedra wind up? Does she die in prison, or does she kill herself, or does she get let out by the rebels after
Nah,
they
the
finish
rebels
defeating
ain't
the
saving
Empire?
that.
Andor then passes that same Jedi healer and nods to her like he's kind of made peace with what she said. It's another nod to his destiny that she saw. He's a messenger, like he is meant to be in a certain place at a certain time. It all references to him basically
Rogue
being on
One.
Scarif during the events of Rogue One. There's a brief moment with Saw Gerrera waiting for them on Jedha, then Krennic in orbit with the Death Star just before the super laser is installed, because that's shot meant to mirror the scene in Rogue One with Grand Moff Tarkin when it was actually happening. He sets off for Kafrene, the beginning of Rogue One, and as they leave, the show what happened to Bix, like I said, basically paying off his child, B2 Emo, living their best life on Mina Rao, is basically the closest thing you can actually get to a happy ending for all these characters, because some of the characters don't really have a happy ending. Like, it ends badly for a lot of people. But I think the idea they want to say that Bix and his son live a happy life, like they're fine in present day. They eventually survive the events.
Maybe we'll get something with them.
Then they cut to credits, and that's it. That's the final season of Andor, one of the best shows that Star Wars will probably ever make. Which probably means that they're never going to do it again. Like, they spent so much money making this show. You can definitely tell, like, all that
So
money
the next
around
one
that
is going to
on
be
screen, like,
shit, bruh.
looks really, really amazing. There's so much
You
going
gotta
on
spend
during
money
this.
to
Are there
make
any
money,
Easter eggs
though.
or references that you spotted during this last block
They
of
know
episodes
that.
that I didn't talk about in the video? Write them below in the comments. Please, please, Dave Filoni, make Ahsoka Season 2 much, much better than Season 1, because, like, that's the only other live-action show that we know about
For real,
right now.
bruh.
But there are supposedly some secret live-action TV shows that they just have not announced yet. Like, I think they'll eventually do a live-action Cal Kestis TV series or movies at some
Bruh, we
point
need
after
that,
the
bruh.
third
It's
Jedi
been
Survivor movie
teased
comes out. So there's
too
at least
much,
a lot of
bruh.
opportunity out there. Like, Hayden Christensen has also said there's a lot more of Darth Vader's story to tell. So I just think
And
there are
we
a lot
need
of plans that they
all
have
of
in
it,
general
bruh.
for, like, the future of
All
Star
of it.
Wars the next several years. There are also a lot of brand new Star Wars movie-related things happening that they announced too. But like I said, they're more focused now on pushing Star Wars back into movie theaters than they are on the actual TV show side of things. Next big Star Wars live-action TV show stuff is Ahsoka Season 2 episodes. We'll see if they release those before or after The
Mandalorian and
movie.
Grogu.
There'll be like a little bit of loose crossover.
That's
I
gonna
think,
be
but
crazy. I
remember,
can't
because
wait.
Ahsoka is still stuck in the other
May
galaxy. It's a little bit harder
2026?
to justify her showing up in the Mandalorian Grogu movie. I think more likely that
May's gonna
movie
be
will help
crazy.
set up the Thrawn movie, which is like the next movie in that part of the timeline they're planning on working on. While you're all watching this, I'm trying to finish my Superman trailer video as fast as possible. So be sure to enable
Superman.
alerts to
Superman's
my
gonna be
channel so you don't
crazy
miss
too.
that.
No
They
cap.
just released trailers for both the Mandalorian and Grogu movie and Ahsoka Season 2. I've already done videos on them. Click here for
I
that
might have to
Mandalorian
watch.
Grogu
I don't know.
trailer.
But thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.